like I said, good evening, everybody. It's great to virtually meet everybody. I got, Crosby, Ben, Sophia, Rhonda, Justin, and Kayla. Again, I'm very impressed you guys joining tonight. And I'm also incredibly impressed that you guys are volunteering to support the Ulman Foundation. It's really it's a tremendous program, and it's a tremendous opportunity for each and every one of you. As Andrew said, I'm currently the president and CEO of American Systems. We are a defense contractor, basically, or a government contractor. We are almost $700 million in size with about 2,000 employees. And we're actually an employee-owned company. So every one of us are owners in our company, which is kind of it's a very unique situation. I've been in the business industry, whatever you want to call it, for 22 years now, I guess, 23 years. I've worked in leadership positions at Raytheon, a company called BAE Systems, and some other companies in the business to government industry. But I also worked at Federal Express as a brand manager, and also worked in PepsiCo in operations. I was also in the military for a while. I graduated from the United States Naval Academy back in 1984 and did 21 years in the service as a naval aviator. I flew what's called maritime patrol aircraft, a thing called a P-3 Orion. Spent a lot of time hunting Soviet submarines, doing, counter narcotics, hunting, drug runners, and all sorts of different things. And it was very, very exciting, part of my career. And I also have a degree from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where I also taught at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. But what Andrew asked me to talk to you guys today about is a little bit about, about leadership, right? And this is an interesting topic for me because the timing wise is very appropriate, because we are actually creating a leadership development program in our company. And it can be a very difficult topic to talk about because, it's hard to understand what leadership is. And that's actually the first thing I want to talk to you guys about, is what is leadership, and give you some ideas of what leadership is and could be. And then talk a little bit about, well, how does a leader get their leadership, right? And then talk about how can they use their leadership, and hopefully close things out by saying, hey, what's this mean to each and every one of you as you start your careers as future leaders. One thing I would ask you guys to do is, if anybody has any questions, any comments, anything like that, please, speak up, reach out, tap Andrew on the shoulder virtually or something, because I do want to try to keep this interactive if it's possible. Okay, is that fair? Okay. So let's start this off. And this is kind of an interesting question, right? What is leadership? And this could actually be a pretty hard question to answer. As we build this leadership development program in our company right now, we ask folks, hey, what is leadership? How do you define it? What is it? And we get all sorts of answers, just all sorts of ones. And some of the weirder ones or funniest ones are like, I don't know what it is, but I know it when I see it. And it's, again, can be a very, very hard thing. And the idea of leadership has been around for almost 700 years, right? And some of the earliest definitions are like, okay, leadership. What is leadership? Well, to lead others, or being in a position of a leader. And you look at that, it's like, well, that's kind of a cop-out. I mean, they're defining leadership with the word lead and leader. And it wasn't really a strong one. And, over the years, the conversation, the definition of leadership has evolved. And it's really come down to a definition which I personally kind of like. And leadership is really, it's the ability to inspire others. The original part of the definition was influence others, but I think it's more than that. I think it's the ability to inspire others to achieve a common goal. Now, when I was at the academy, the definition that I was fond of was, leadership is the ability to get others to do what they thought they couldn't do themselves, right? Have people achieve something greater than they think they are capable of. That's what leadership is. And in many ways, this definition of inspiring others to a common goal really, strikes a chord with me. Now, I do think it's important that we all have an idea of what leadership is, or what a leader is, compared to, say, what a manager is, or what somebody who's really good at something is. And when you think about what a leader does in the job as being a leader, they do things like this, right? They set vision, they set direction, they they build and develop these teams, and then they align these teams to some kind of common goal, and they energize the teams to reach that goal. And then they lead through times of trouble, and help drive change in organizations. Now, kind of complementary, but kind of different than a leader is a manager. A manager is really more involved in the operational aspects of something, right? They make plans, they do budgets, they organize and staff the work that needs to be done. And then a manager goes about and tracks and reports progress against that. And then as things come up or challenges happen or whatever, they work to address those. And then the third aspect is this individuals or people who are, really just good at what they do. These are like the experts, right? These have this specialty knowledge about something and this keen insight of how to do something. And they make, it says here, produce high quality deliverables and model high performance. Now, when you think of this thing of leaders, managers, and experts, where does leadership come into that? Well, it's there. It's in the intersection of those three capabilities: being a leader, being a manager, and being an expert at something. When you push those three things together, that's where leadership is just founded. Is that fair? Okay. Now, assuming we all agree that leadership is the ability to inspire others and work towards achieving this common goal, here's the big question for you. Are people born as leaders or not? And that's been a question that's been around for, God, decades, centuries, right? I mean, you sit there and read the history books. Alexander the Great, he's a great leader. Julius Caesar, great leader. Napoleon Bonaparte, great leader. All born great leaders. And it's been a popular theory about this, and it's still prevalent today. It's called the great man theory. And you know what? In some instances, it's true, right? In some situation, people are born to be leaders for those situations. But being a leader and being a leader and inspiring people to do things involves just more than one situation. So that whole construct of an individual is born a leader has really kind of been disproved over the ages. And it's really focused on leadership development, on giving people the training and the experiences to become good leaders. And this is exactly what you guys are doing in your work with the Ulman Foundation. You are taking a step in developing yourself to be a leader today and a leader tomorrow. And it's pretty amazing and it's pretty cool. And I'm really proud of you guys to do this. Okay. Since you guys are aspiring leaders and soon to be leaders and starting leaders and are leaders and all this, let's talk a little bit about, well, what allows you to be a leader? What gives you the leadership ability? And it really comes down to one word, two versions: power. Positional power and personal power. Now, when we talk about power here, we're not talking about, I don't know, like strength or the physics equation of power, or I'll date myself, He-Man having the power, or little power pills that, Mario Brothers creatures eat or something. It's not that stuff. It's all about the ability to impact somebody's behavior. And the first one, positional power, well, that's all based on really a physical position in a hierarchy of an organization. It's like a role. It's kind of what your title is. It's things like that. And there's different types of positional power out there. And here they are. The first one is called legitimate power, right? And this is power that you get when you're in a certain position. Let's say you got, instead of sitting here listening to me tonight, your parents are going out or something, and you got a baby brother or a baby sister, and they say, hey, can you babysit, little Joey or something? And you say, yeah, sure. Well, as the babysitter, you have legitimate power. And you can tell little Joey, hey, little Joey, time for you to go to bed. And Joey says, I don't want to go to bed. Why do I need to go to bed? And you say, because I'm in charge and you do what I say. And that's working to use positional power, legitimate power, as part of positional power to tell Joey to go to bed. The next one there, that's called reward power. And this is, in essence, it's bribery, right? What it says is like, hey, little Joey, you know what? If you go brush your teeth, I'll let you watch K-pop Demon Hunters for a little bit. Again, it's kind of a trade-off. I'm bribing you, right? Little Joey, go brush your teeth. I'll let you watch K-pop Demon Hunters. The next one is coercive power, basically saying, hey, little Joey, if you don't go brush your teeth, I'm telling mom and dad, and you're going to get in trouble. Trying to use that type of power to get little Joey to go brush your teeth, right? And the last one is called resource power, where you control resources. In other words, hey, little Joey, if you want to watch K-pop Demon Hunters, you got to go brush your teeth. Again, various forms of power at your ability when you're in that position as babysitter, right? The other set of powers, well, it's called personal power. And this is really derived from who you are, what your experiences are, how you behave in certain situations. And just like positional power, there's 4 different types of personal power. The first one is called reverent power, and it's really driven just by likability, right? Little Joey's, you tell little Joey to go to bed. He says, hey, big brother, big sister, just because I like you, I'm going to go to bed. That's power derived from who you are, and little Joey likes you, right? Expert power is really derived from being good at something. Say, I don't know, say you're really good. I'm going to try to pull this thread a little bit further on this babysitter thing. Say you're really good at brushing your teeth. You're a world champion toothbrusher or something. And if you brush your teeth a certain way, you can get out, popcorn kernels or something like that. And little Joey had popcorn watching K-pop Demon Hunters, and his teeth hurt or something like that. You say, hey, little Joey, if you go brush your teeth, I know and do it this way, I know you'll get that kernel out. And just because little Joey knows you're an expert toothbrush brusher, he does it. Is that fair? Then you get into this thing called information power and connection power. And I totally have no idea how to continue the Little Joey scenario for you, because information power is really power derived from what you know and what nobody else does. And what you know is so critical for somebody else to do something that they will do things for you because of that power. I'll do it because you know something I don't. In many cases, you hear these terms like, information is power, words are power, all that type of stuff. Those are just different connotations of that information power. And then there's connection power. This is like who you know, right? I'll do something for you because you know Taylor Swift. Along those lines, it's that type of activity. But this is where these are called power bases. And as leaders, you have different types of power bases based on your experiences and based on your position and based on who you are. And as you continue to develop yourself as leaders, what I would ask is that you continue to figure out what power bases you have available to you at those situations and at that time, because those power bases are so important to how you actually influence or inspire somebody to do something. And this is where we talk about, the different ways you can use those power bases to actually inspire, impact, influence whatever behavior you want to get to that common goal. And this is called leadership styles. And if you get academic, there's like 12, 15 different leadership styles. And if you start looking at them, a lot of them look right the same. So what I did is actually went to the easy mode and went to 6. So here's like 6 leadership styles. The first one is something called the commanding style, or directive, or authoritarian, or coercive, or all these types of words. This is something that is pretty. A lot of people think this is what leadership is. And this relies solely on positional power. and it's really commanding. It's giving orders. It's telling somebody to say, hey, do this and do this now. And be honest with you, it is great in times of stress, times of crisis, times of emergencies. When I was flying the aircraft and we had in-flight emergencies, whether it's a fire or an engine going out or something like that, you rely very heavily on the commanding style. Get the fire extinguishers, check those things, do this, do that. And because it's very, very short term, very quick, but it has consequences. And if you use it too much, you can stifle somebody's creativity, innovation, initiative. You get people who just sit and wait for you to tell them to do something, and they won't do anything unless you tell them to do it. So in the long term, it could have very negative consequences on the ability to continue to drive others to do what you want them to do. Second style is called visionary. And this is a great style for what you're doing here with Ulman. This really brings teams together around a common goal, a rallies cry. We're going to do this because we're going to do this because it's going to benefit the Ulman Foundation and the work they do in fighting cancer. It relies on big picture, relies on tying everything into that one vision, right? And it is incredibly powerful. The challenge with it is that in many cases, there's a lot of other things that are kind of on a short for you, so short term here, are just little things. The little things may be ignored, and those little things may be critical to you to get the overall task done. So you just got to be careful with it, right? Pay attention to it. The third type of leadership style is called pace setting. And this thing is interesting because it's all focused on performance and results and working harder than anybody else on your team is working, and then driving your team to work as hard as you can. And this can actually be a very good leadership style, especially for short-term bursts of activity. Now, there's two challenges with it. One, it says there, it's not suitable for long-term program or long-term efforts, right? Because if you're constantly banging on going the best, working the hardest, you can burn yourself out. You could burn your team out, and then everything just crumbles. The other risky thing on using pace setting is you have to maintain a positive attitude. If you go in and try to work pace setting from a negative perspective, they're so much better than us. We're not any good. We got to get better. We just can't, we're not the same level as to be able to do this work. We just got to get better because we aren't good enough. That type of mentality or framing or whatever, you can really have a negative impact on somebody and destroy anything you're trying to do. Okay. Next one's coaching. This is a real popular one. This is one a lot of people talk about. It's like, as a leader, I'm more of a coach, right? And this involves really developing people in a team environment, and it's incredibly strong, right? And you see it, right? And you see it in sports, you see it in sports, and you see it in sports. It builds strong connections within the team, and it really gets people aligned to a common goal. Now, the challenge with it is time. It takes time to be a coach. It takes time to develop a team. If you go back to the sports analogy, right? You hear teams that are so-and-so is in a rebuilding year, or so-and-so is, and it could take 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years for teams to rebuild themselves. It just takes a lot of time. Time you may have or time you may not have. Just depends. Next style is something called a democratic style. And this is one that is very popular in American systems. And I'm a big fan of this one. It's really helps build a collaborative environment. And the reason I like it is that, well, when you get everybody's input into a decision or to what you want to do, you get everybody's buy-in. You get everybody's scent on the decision, right? Everybody has a piece of the action. So when something goes wrong or something happens and unexpected, you don't get the finger pointing because everybody was participating in that decision-making process. Now, the challenge on this one is that you have to engage everybody on your team, and you have to engage everybody and give them the ability to be part of the process and to help input on decisions and really be collaborative and be empowered, right? Because this is really critical to empowering people through this democratic process. Again, the challenge is you got to be committed to it, and it takes time. Last but not least, there's this thing called the affiliative leadership style. And this is one, it's kind of like coaching, but instead of coaching a team in the broad sense, you're really focused on individuals and building strong bonds between individuals on your team and with individuals on your team. And this can be incredibly powerful. It's like one-on-one coaching. But the risk is you may become, it's going to sound bad because it's not necessarily a bad thing, buddies, right? And what that does, it could hinder the ability to make a hard decision. Does that make sense? Now, the one thing that I would say on all these leadership styles in different ways is that they're all different, and they're all based on your situation, and they're all based on your experiences and using them, and it's all based on what power you have available to you. And one thing I would ask is that, well, as you work through and think about different ways of approaching a situation with your team, take a step back and kind of step out of yourself, take one of these outer bodies experiences and put yourself in the shoes of somebody on your team and kind of listen to yourself or think about what you're saying as a member of your team and how you would feel of another leader kind of doing what you're planning on doing from the team's point of view. Does that make sense? Because that's called emotional intelligence. And that's something that is an incredibly powerful tool. It's the ability to see things from another's perspective, to understand how they may interpret something. They may, how they would feel, how they would hear about something. So with that ability, you can change your message. You can change your leadership style. You can tap into a different type of power or something like that to be able to influence somebody to do what you want them to do. And that brings us here, right? It's a lot of academic stuff. It says kind of academic. It's actually very academic. It's very theoretical. And when I was in school, when I first learned this stuff back at the academy, the focus wasn't necessarily on learning the power styles or learning the power bases or the leadership styles. It was, trying to remember what is what so I could answer my question on the exam, right? But, over the past 40 some years of leading air crews in flight and in essence, combat situations to working in businesses and change environments or highly competitive environments, I learned over the years that, these power bases and styles that I learned in college actually are real. And if you think about it and think about the different situations you are in, they really do become quite relevant for you, right? So just kind of think about it, these power bases and these styles and things, leadership styles and things like that. And then as you become leaders and work with teams to try to accomplish things, experiment with different leadership styles in different situations. There's nothing wrong with experimentation. And you may find that some leadership styles will work for you in some situations and other leadership styles weren't. I remember way back early in my career, we were on a detachment flying out of Keflavik, Iceland, and doing some high profile missions out of there. And one of the air crew on my crew had a situation at home. Their house was broken into, and he was freaking out, and he was, needed to go home and solve things, but he was so critical to the mission, he just couldn't. Well, because we were new in these leadership positions, my pilot and myself used positional power and directional leadership style to say, hey, no, you're staying here. That's an order. And, you will do this, right? And well, it had the effect we wanted, which is like he stayed and we flew the missions, but it had an adverse effect on the team, right? It really destroyed the team environment that we had created in the air crew. But I learned. And now I learn in different, situations where later in my career, we were flying out of Sigonella, Sicily, where we had a mission where we were briefed that if we launched, there's a good chance that we never would come back. And we were told not to tell our crew about it. And the same pilot, myself, learning from what we did last time, said, you know what, that's not the right thing to do. So we used what in essence was some of our personal power, a little bit of positional, but mostly personal power, and a democratic leadership style to talk to our crew and explain the situation and to give them all input and said, hey, if you guys don't want to go on this mission, we'll find somebody else. It's your decision. And lo and behold, we knew this would happen. Every single one of them said, nope, we're going. Now, the good news is we never went. But again, it's just a different situation with a different leadership style. And as you go through your career and as you grow and develop and become equipped with more and more things based on the situations, create your own toolbox of things you can use in different situations. And as you get into a leadership situation or a leadership environment and encounter different things, you have things that you can fall back on, right? Different power bases available to you to use different leadership styles to get different effects. Now, the one thing, again, my one word of advice to you guys is this. Whatever you do, this is the emotional intelligence piece. Try putting yourself in the shoes of the people you are leading and try to see yourself and your leadership style from their point of view. And then ask yourself, if you were them, would that inspire you to achieve greatness, to do something? Because that becomes an amazing tool for you. And that's what I had for you tonight, quick and dirty. What do you guys think? Any questions, thoughts? Hey, there's cameras on. Look at that. Anybody, anything?
So Grace has asked, how did you overcome adversities with the various forms of leadership you mentioned?
Ooh, that's a good one. How do you overcome adversities? So I don't think anything that happens in a leadership role is single threaded. It happens at one time. You know what I mean, Grace? So if you get in a situation, so you try something, and you run into adversity, right? And the thing you tried didn't work. It's almost you try something different. Does that kind of make sense? It sounds kind of goofy, but if you got a situation where, say, you let's go back to the babysitting things. I think that's a riot, right? You tell your little brother to go brush their teeth, and he says, "No, I'm not going to go brush my teeth. I'm going to go in and tear up the kitchen or something, right? Or something." Well, you may have another power base to use, right? It's like, hey, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to say, hey, little Joey, if you don't go brush your teeth now, and if you don't clean this up, I'm going to tell mom and dad. And then you put another type of thing is, and you're not going to be able to go see K-pop Demon Hunters, the opera or something, those. So it's being able to leverage different things based on the situation. And again, thinking about how little Joey would perceive things from his point of view, right? I want to go see K-pop Demon Hunters, the opera. So I'm going to do something different because if I don't do this, something's going to change. Does that kind of make sense? I know it's kind of a goofy way of thinking about it, but just think about it. It may flow that way. But I think overcoming adversity and all that type of things, it's a whole plethora of skill sets from persistence, right? You got to be persistent. You got to be flexible. You got to be agile. All these different adjectives you hear used on things, and it's a great working through adversity and overcoming adversity. It's a great skill set to develop. Absolutely. How's that for a great non-answer for you?
When do you know when to switch your leadership style?
Ooh, that's a good one. Usually it would be when you're not getting the results you're looking for. That's probably the biggest thing, right? Because you have in your reason you're doing something using a leadership style or power base is because you want to accomplish something. You want to impact the behavior in some way, shape, or form. You want something to happen. And if that something ain't happening, then maybe you need to try something different. And you may need to take a step back and think about, well, why didn't what I try, it didn't work out? Why would I try? Why when I tried to do this, it didn't work out? And think about that. Well, it didn't work out because I don't know, maybe little Joey doesn't have any teeth or something, so he can't go brush his teeth. So then you got to think about, well, some other way of doing something, another style to try to get him to go. That just throws the whole thing out. He can't brush his teeth if he doesn't have any. Yeah, it's when I guess the long answer to a short question is when something doesn't work the way you want it to do, you may need to try something different. How's that?
Right. I know this is something that these individuals will probably face in the future, so I'm pretty sure they don't have this question yet, but I think it's a good one to ask. Um, if you have someone on your team, someone that you are leading that is not responsive, that isn't performing or doing the things that they need to be doing, how would you suggest kind of pulling your leadership to kind of motivate them?
That's a good question. You weren't supposed to ask questions.
I ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, I know, it's very annoying. Well, that's a great question because you're going to find that, right? You're going to have individuals that aren't doing what you want them to do. And one of the things and there's different things you could do here. One is, do introspective. Why aren't they doing something that you wanted them to do? Is there a reason that's apparent to you that something is happening, right? Something happening in their life, their environment, whatever. But the number one thing you could do though is really communicate and talk to them and say, hey, Andrew, why aren't you doing why aren't you doing this? Is something going on? Not to come in with a critical side or whatever, but to come in with um, curiosity, a concern, right? What's going on, man? Why can't I asked you to do this type of thing and you said you do it, but now you can't do it. There's just something happening in your life. There's something I can do to make it easier for you to do it. Those types of scenarios. You may get to a point where the individual says, you know what, I'm just not doing it. Right? And then it's a situation where it's like, well, if you're not doing it, then I guess it's probably something you shouldn't do. So you probably need to go do something somewhere else type of thing. But the real fundamental piece is if somebody's not doing something you want them to do, you got to figure out why. And the best way to figure out why is really just ask them, And then if they got a problem or situation, then work with them to find another way of doing it. Or find something for them to do that they can do. Because there's always situations where you may have an individual who doesn't know what to do, what you ask them to do, in which case it's a matter of training or, telling them or helping them figure out how to do it, or they just can't do it. It's a performance issue. Is that fair?
That's fair. I think Justin had a question.
Okay. Better be about baby
Yeah,
Joey.
so it's not about that. But
Oh
I'm the
man.
captain of my JV football team, and some of my other
Yeah.
teammates try and like take on like my leadership role sometimes. Like they'll try and like give orders to the team that like I'm supposed to give, and like I don't want to like overstep and like tell them, hey, stop doing that. So I want to find that like middle ground where I can be like, hey, like this is my job, but also not like tell them their job's not important.
Yeah. And there's different ways you can communicate that, Justin. You can say, one of the thoughts would be, hey, I'll pick on Andrew some more because he's sitting there in front of me. It's like, having this is basically a one-to-one conversation with Andrew off to the side and say, Andrew, I really appreciate your being motivated, and I really appreciate, your being vocal and wanting to help the team. I just need you to help me. I guess what you're trying to say is I need you not to torpedo me, right? Is what you're trying to say. Is like I need you to make sure that we're working on this together, right? I need you to I want to make sure that we're working together in concert with the goals we have set up as this team. That sounds kind of wishy-washy, Justin. You know, I know it does. But deep down, the other guys may or may not even know they're doing this. You know what I'm talking about? You're
Yeah,
on mute, so
perfect.
you got
Thank
you.
you.
And I think that's the thing. There's a lot of, you know, in a team environment, right? So I played varsity sports at the academy, and you know, I was in a leadership position like you on this team, and you know, a lot of guys would get very excited and very vocal and very, you know, outlandish, you know, not very excited and vocal about things. And you just got to get in these situations. It's like, man, I really appreciate your emotion and your drive, but you know, we got jobs to do. And right now, your job is number one is middle linebackers to make sure you're reading the quarterback and making sure you're not, you know, you're following through on where those plays are. And I need you to really focus on that because I got, you know, little Joey over here working at the cornerback position, doing, you know, I know he's working, you know, this, that, and the other, but I need you to focus on what you're got to do. That's, you know, you got to focus on your job and make sure you're doing your job here and make sure that's happening and maybe take that approach to it. You know?
Yes, sir.
And I will point out, because he won't brag about it, not only was he a collegiate athlete, he was a national champion collegiate athlete.
Two times. That's another story.
Yeah, he won't brag about that. Autumn asked a great question. How can I report negative news to my team we didn't expect?
You just got to be honest, man. I mean, Autumn is just straight up. It's a hard message, and it can be how you use that is really the key, right? I think you got to be honest with folks and straight up. And this is what's happening. To be honest, when we talk about my company and what's happening in the environment, if you guys watch the news, you know, we're in a government shutdown right now. It has an impact on us. And right now we're in a position where we can survive for a couple of months or a couple of weeks, I should say. Once we start pushing into the month, it's going to be tough. And we've been, you know, delivering that message to our team straight up. It's like, hey, this is unexpected. We kind of expected a shutdown, but you know, that type of thing. And all we can do in this situation is do what we can to make the best of it, and do what we can to pivot, be flexible, be agile, and take advantage of it. And you could actually use negative news to from a team building perspective as a rallying cry, right? One of the best ways to build a team is to have, it's going to sound bad, but a common enemy is the way to describe it. Something that happens that you all have gone through that then becomes, you know, your flag, you know, and that negative news could become a rallying cry for you to achieve even greater things. This depends how you can frame it. Does that help, Autumn?
I think I saw a thumbs up. Yes, she
Yeah.
said.
There you go.
I mean, and yeah, that again, great point. I see a perfect example. I see a bunch of boys Latin gentlemen on here. We already know what their rallying cry is, and they just really want to beat St. Paul's. That's really their only mission in life seems to be to beat St. Paul's. So I think that's a great rallying cry. Edith, yeah, you can come off of mute if you like.
When you were talking about the different types of leadership styles, I don't know if this was addressed, but how do you know like which type of leadership style to use in which type of situation?
You got to, I mean, this is one you got to be honest with you, Edith. You got to experiment and figure out for yourself. The easy one for me is things like, it really depends. And it also depends how much time you have, right? Because if you notice that list of things, the different styles, it's like, this takes a lot of time. This takes a lot of time. This takes a lot of time. It really depends on your situation. And be honest with you, something is called situational leadership, which is a whole different creature that we could talk about someday. But it's really how much time you have and how fast you need a behavior to happen, right? So if you need something like quick, right? I need you to do this. I say, Andrew, go walk the dog. Directive, because we got to walk that dog right now. If you got, you know, the ability to you know, if you got time and space to be able to do democratic stuff, which I'm a big fan of democratic and coaching styles, just because I think those create stronger teams. But again, it just takes time. If you have the time available to you, and the desire and the ability to engage folks, those can really be powerful. But all of them are working. Just depends on the situation. And again, it's just you'll be able to experiment with them as you continue in these leadership positions. So it's kind of a cop-out way of saying it. Does that kind of make sense, Edith? Sort of.
No, yeah, that makes sense. It's like basically how much time you have and
Yeah.
what
And
kind
if
of
you have
effect you want to have.
Yeah, and if you've done it before, right? Or if you've been in situations where others have done it. Say you've been in a situation where you got a team and the team leader says, "Hey, Edith," and I'm gonna pick on Ben and Justin because their names are on my screen. It's all, how would you guys do this, right? And everybody goes through this. I would do it this way. I would do it that way, and you vote on it or something, and you kind of work through a plan together. That becomes that you've experienced that democratic style, and you're just like, "Hey, I'm in this situation where that could work. So let's try it." And you go through this democratic process of asking everybody in your team, how would you do it? And kind of come to a consensus. And if you have the time to do that's great. Um, but you may find, you know what, I think I want the team to operate like Justin's football team. And I'm going to do a coaching style. I'm going to, coach these kids to think about this way and think about this that way. And that's kind of, where they want them to be. And maybe pace setting comes in. I'm going to pick on Justin some more if I see his name in front of me, where I'm going to go into the locker room. I'm going to bench 450 for, 6 hours or something like that, just to show everybody this is the what I expect them to do. There's all different ways to pertain it. And it's really just depends on what's happening, kind of a weird way of answering, but think about it. Probably at midnight, you'll wake up and go, "Oh yeah, okay, I get it."
And Ben asks, what leadership skill do you value the most?
Oh, geez. I think the one I'd like is in essence, skill or style, I guess is the
Skill.
question.
He says
Wow.
skill.
We didn't talk about skill. That's another lesson. So I get that one later. But no, I think there's a couple things that I kind of grew up when is, I think integrity is probably the biggest one for me, right? I mean, again, that was beaten into me at the academy and my high school. I went to a private boys high school in Virginia with a big honor code, right? So integrity was big there. The academy honor code was big, but even more important was in aviation. When you fly these airplanes in the military and such, you got to be honest with your maintainers. Have to be the highest degree of integrity. Yes, sir, I fixed that. Or I'm going to be there at this time, or my time on top, my weapons launch is here, I'm going to be there. It's the ability to make a promise and keep it, right? And being as honest as you possibly can, I think, is probably the most important thing to me. And sometimes you're successful at it, sometimes you're not, Uh-oh. I gotta hide this. Let me stop sharing so I can read this little thing here. Wait a minute.
This is a funny one.
Okay, what did it say? I saw little Joey, then it got blacked out. What's little Joey up to?
So Sophia asks, how would little Joey and his leadership skills help in overcoming unexpected challenges that may come up during the So Do We campaign?
Wow. How to little Joey, or how do you get little Joey to overcome the challenges? Um, that's a good one. Is that on chat? I want to see that one again.
Yeah, it's in the chat.
Okay, give me a second. Let's see. How would little So I think one of the things we talk about skills, right? We talked about, when I think it was, yeah, Ben asked skills, and I said integrity. There's multiple leadership skills out there. I think another one is flexibility and agility. And flexibility and agility is all about being able to see what's happening in your situation, or whatever's happening, and being able to change course and change direction and take your team along with a change course and a change direction. Remember, we talked about leaders are good at I hate saying leaders are good at leading, but leaders are good at leading and driving through change, or driving through challenge, not just addressing a challenge, but driving through change. And I think what with little Joey would come, because little Joey has figured out multiple ways not to brush his teeth, if you remember, right? And you had to use all these different power bases and styles to get little Joey to do something. I think little Joey is pretty darn good at being agile and flexible. And as you go through your campaign, right, and you get these unexpected things, your ability to see what's happening, what's changed, and what actions you can take to overcome any barriers that got in your way to reach your ultimate goal is a tremendous skill. So that goes back to agility and flexibility. And what skills do you think our generation needs to improve to be ready for the real world? You know what, you guys, to be honest, so I've been in many ways blessed, right? I think in a way, I'll tell you why I've been blessed. So one of the things I do is kind of a part-time gig, although I'm kind of winding down, is I support the Naval Academy admissions office as a blue and gold officer. So I interview kids who want to go to the Naval Academy, you know, all different types of kids. And in doing that, it gives me kind of a window into your generations, right? You're still part of that generation. And it's amazing to me how I could never compete with the generation of kids that I interview for the Academy, because they are amazing people and you guys are amazing people. Just being part of this Ulman Foundation program is excuse my language, it's friggin' amazing. There is no ands or buts. This is just, you're doing this thing in volunteering and being on the call today and in helping the Ulman Foundation and what they're doing for kids with cancer. You exhibit such amazing skills, not just leadership skills, but team building skills, personal skills. It's just amazing to me. And when I sit there and think about myself at your age, right, and what I didn't do at my age, and I did some stuff, but nothing to the level that you guys are doing. So when you sit there and say, which skills do you think our generation needs to improve? I just focused on I think you guys are an amazing generation. I think you guys got tremendous skills and tremendous abilities to do things that you know my generation would never even think of, you know. And I just keep building off what you do and build off what you're good at and constantly experience things, because that's going to give you the ability to do more. How's that for a pep rally?
Great.
Is that it?
Awesome.
I hope this was helpful, you guys. I really do. I think it's again, I've said this a million times already tonight, but I am incredibly humbled to meet you guys. You guys are really just impressive folks, and anything I can do to help you, if it's stuff like this that can help you think about things differently, do things differently, I'm more than happy to continue having contact. And what do you have suggestions for people in the Naval Academy? Well, I got tons, Edith. The biggest thing you can do if you want to go to the Naval Academy is doing stuff like the Ulman Foundation. And as you go through school, do whatever you can to focus on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math work. That's keep taking math, keep taking chemistry, keep taking physics, and keep putting yourself in these leadership positions, because this is what the Academy looks for. Smart kids that have 10 amazing things, and you guys are on a path to doing amazing things. That's a great question, Edith, when it comes to leadership. Cool.
Thank you.
Anytime. Okay.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you, John, for coming today, teaching us about leadership, some